Hello and welcome to Mindset Kitchen. Another episode, another wonderful guest. Today in my kitchen, I have a huge pleasure to have George Anderson. Hello, George.
Hello, Diana.
How are you?
I'm really good, actually, and really looking forward to today. Not just talking about the various mindset messages that we'll, I'm sure, get into, but also to enjoy a delicious meal as well at the end of it.
I hear you are a little bit of a foodie. You cook a lot at home as well.
Yeah, I do. I really enjoy cooking, and I often find at the end of a day, it's a really good way to just unwind, and nobody bothers you when you're cooking. You just get into it, and then everyone else just like leaves you to it. So I quite like that component to it as well.
It is enjoyable. The same I find it as well. Quite de-stressing.
Mm.
Before I get into your messages, I'm going to start preparing your katsu curry, chicken katsu curry, which you said is one of your favorites, and you do in a little bit different ways. I hope you enjoy this one. And whilst I'm preparing the chicken, which needs to rest a little bit for 15 minutes in the fridge, I want you to tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, I'm almost glad you didn't ask me the question, what is it that you do? Because that's a question I've always struggled to answer. It was probably easier the first part of my career when I was a personal trainer, and people would say, well, what do you do? And I'd say, well, I'm a personal trainer. And that was really simple, really straightforward. People kind of understood what that was. But now, and over the last however many years, 10, 12 years, as I've moved away from the physical personal training and much more into holistic performance, and I talk and teach about resilience and stress and motivation and mindset and so on, it's become a lot harder to really pin down and say, well, that's who I am, that's what it is that I do. There's always, and always has been, a range of different things that I do. So I spend most of my time now speaking at events, working with groups, training, longer form programs like whole day, multi-day sessions and events and kind of conferences, and really sharing messages and going deeper into how people can take these messages, take these ideas and translate them into their own lives. And so the corporate work, the training is one major part of what I do. But then I also work with people as a coach. And I've also got a range of online offerings and programs and various other things as well. So I guess if I was to try and sum up what it is that I do, and I do often try and do this, I've never really been successful in doing it. I'd say I'm a well-being and performance coach and speaker. So I mean, it's a very long-winded way of telling you what it is that I do.
It sounds like you do a lot of things. That's probably why.
But I've always been, I've never wanted to do one thing. So even when I was a personal trainer, I ran an online business selling running clothing in Ireland, for example, in the early 2000s. And that was an interesting experience. Didn't explode, didn't go the way with me and my sister who I was running it with, the way we'd, I think, planned or hoped it would. But it was also, for me, the beginning of creating a following, creating a community. So I had a lot of people subscribing to my email list and customers, and this is before the days of GDPR. So people would buy a pair of running socks or something from me, then they get a barrage of emails. I think quite useful emails. I've always enjoyed sharing tips and techniques and tricks and methods about running specifically back in the day, because that's what I was really focused on. And so I was just sending loads and loads of emails out, and that really was the beginning of very long, and it's still going now, sort of relationship with email marketing, I guess you could call it, but content creation. So I love creating content. I love sharing thoughts, sharing ideas. Not everyone's going to be in the room when I'm standing on a stage, or not everyone's going to be doing one-to-one coaching with me, but I feel like I can reach a much broader audience when I'm posting on social media or writing emails or blogs or whatnot. So that's really, again, evolved from the running and the physical over the years to capture a lot more of the holistic things. But absolutely, I've never wanted to do just one thing. It's always been the variety that has interested me more than anything else.
And when you say over the years, how many years have you been doing this?
Well, I actually did a degree in engineering, first of all. So I finished that, did a master's degree in automotive engineering, which I then never used. And sometimes I feel like the only reason I talk about that now is because my mum and dad paid for my 5 years of university, and I feel obliged to mention it almost. So I did a master's degree, and when I left that, I'd already spent a bit of time. I'd done some gym instructing qualifications. I'd spent some time working in a gym, so I kind of went from that into personal training. That was the first thing I did. So I never used that. So that was 2002. So just over 20 years ago that I started doing all of this.
That's a long time. A long time and lots of experience.
Yeah, and it's been interesting actually having the experience, because I feel now, most of it in the early days was around the physical. And it was funny actually, Diana, because I came from 400-meter running when I was at university. So I was a track athlete, and I was the mentality and surrounded by other people of the same mentality. Coach says, this is how you train. You push yourself to the absolute limit, then you go and do that. He says, here's your training sessions in the gym. You go and do that in the gym. We weren't really given masses of guidance with nutrition, and fair enough, I was a student at university. I wasn't really going to follow it anyway. But point was, like, I had this mentality. You get told what to do, you go and do it, you get the results. When I became a personal trainer, it was all about the physical, but it became very apparent very quickly that it's more to just knowing what to do. And most people don't struggle with more information, they struggle with more doing. And so after a few years, I realized, and it did take me a few years to really pick the cotton onto this, that it's about how do you bridge the gap between knowing and doing? How do you help people to evolve and change their behaviors? And that's where I got really interested in behavior change, psychology, NLP, so neuro-linguistic programming. And so I studied all of those topics as well, to bring the behavior change methodology with the physical understanding and experience that I had. And now I sort of bring all of that in with some of the other sort of mindset work and neuroscience and other strategies to help people really perform at their best with that underpinning of the physical. So I think the different areas of experience that I've had over the last couple of decades have sort of put me in a decent position to help people.
And I think the events that you have done, quite a few challenged you, and at the same time having that right mindset really helped you as well.
Yeah, 100%. And the ultra endurance challenges in particular they are so much more about mindset than physical fitness. You don't run 100 miles just off being really, really fit. You need to have a base level of fitness, but you have to be able to tap into something else. And that was really what attracted me to doing those events, was to really explore those kind of further reaches, those the outer reaches of what's possible from a mindset perspective, from a personal perspective, but mindset.
So it makes sense why you brought these 3 wonderful messages. I cannot wait to literally dive into them. So the first one is reframe stress and discomfort. Tell me why you have chosen this one.
So I talk a lot about stress in the work that I do, and it's often in the context of performance. So like, how do you perform under pressure? And a lot of the people I work with already have what would be regarded now as a stress is enhancing mindset. So you can either have a stress is enhancing mindset, or I think the opposite end of the continuum there is stress is disabling. So stress is bad, stress is something to be avoided, stress is uncomfortable, it's bad for us, we should definitely try to mitigate the stress and don't get yourself into situations where there's going to be lots of it. That's a stress is disabling mindset, and it's very very prominent. A lot of people will have that mindset, and actually at this point as well, it's worth pointing out what a mindset really is, because we talk about mindset and think positive mindset, maybe growth mindset, but really all it is a collection of beliefs that we have about a certain thing. So if we believe that stress is bad for us, it turns out that it's bad for us. And there's some phenomenal research going back probably about 14, 15 years now that really shows that from a health perspective, if you believe that stress is bad for you, it doesn't just have some weird psychological damaging effect, like, oh my goodness, I'm going to avoid stressful situations and then not aspire to reaching your full potential, but it actually has physiological consequences as well. And some incredible research has gone into that. But I'm really more interested in the performance side. So what happens if you believe stress is good for you, and then you find yourself in a situation, and then all of a sudden you're looking at stress and you're looking at how you're feeling, and you're looking at maybe even the touches of anxiety or the uncertainty and that feeling of being out of control, and looking at that as something that you can really lean into that's elevating your performance. And hence the name stress is enhancing. And I think it's something that we all have the capacity to do, just knowing that you can take stress away from being, this is bad for me, I should avoid it, just nudging it up a little bit and saying, well, maybe this is an opportunity for my, for me to learn something, to grow through this. And actually the feeling that you're experiencing being an indication that this is your body and your mind getting you ready to really lean in and focus on what's in front of you. So I think that's a really powerful mindset message and strategy, certainly that I've tried to adopt over the years in many of the things that I've done.
This is indeed very powerful because you can adapt it in anything you would, career, personal life. It's because I think very similarly. I think about fears very similarly. They're there for a reason. Do not think if it's fear, then you have to avoid it. Usually, let's say if something happens where I was going through grief, let's say 3 years ago, I wasn't trying to think about it as a bad thing, which is really bad, which is painful. I was trying to lean into it and see how much can I grow? What can I do about it? So it's the same, I think, with stress. If we have the stress, people usually perform better under stress. So many people say under pressure, I perform really better. What does that say about you?
Yeah.
Why do you perform better? Because you grow. You know that afterwards you have grown as a person. You maybe your beliefs change about what you can do, what you can't do, because people think, oh, it's stress, I'm not going to do it. So it's the way where people say feel the fear and do it anyway. I love that, right?
Yeah.
So feel that stress. What does it say about you, about the situation, and embrace it. And I recently experienced a lot of stress and discomfort. Sometimes it's not very comfortable to stand here and just being in front of the cameras. It's stressful to me. But I know what this stress is going to give me. I'm going to grow as a person. I'm going to get better in front of cameras.
Yeah.
Whether people notice I'm good or not good, it's what's internally going on for me. And that's that internal dialogue that connects you with the positive attitude over stress and discomfort.
Yeah,
as you say.
100%. And I think the thing that is absolutely foundational to all of that, though, is that level of self-awareness that you need. So you have to have the awareness that you're experiencing stress. It's not saying, well, I've got to stop feeling stress, or I've got to stop feeling grief or anxiety or worry or doubt or uncertainty. It's just acknowledging those emotions, how you're feeling, and then separating yourself out from it slightly. So it's almost like you're out here looking down at yourself whilst you're experiencing it, saying, that's okay. What's this teaching me? Like, why am I feeling fear? Why am I feeling anxiety? Why am I feeling grief? And what can this teach me? And some of the answers are obvious, grief in particular, but you go through that, and it's about recognizing the discomfort and then seeing what you can take from it and going with it. But if you don't have that awareness of it in the first place, then you get lost in that emotion very, very quickly. And stress is a classic example of that, where you can feel the stress, and then whatever the emotion response is, whether it's fear, doubt, uncertainty, worry, disconnection, it can drive this inner narrative about this is bad, or you maybe start seeing the world as a place that isn't giving you what it should be giving you, and things are unfair, or you start having an inner dialogue that's about self-doubt and comparison, and then that in turn drives an even more powerful emotional response. And so you end up getting this think-feel vortex, and stress can be incredibly debilitating if you don't harness it. And that's why this stress is enhancing mindset is so powerful, because you can apply it to most situations. As you said, I really sort of came across this first from a practical perspective when I was doing my first ultra challenge, which was the 10 marathons in 10 days. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to do this.
Wow.
I was pretty confident I'd be able to do 3 in a row. That was like 1 day, 3 days. I was fairly certain I was going to be okay for that.
That's crazy.
But beyond that point, like, I had no idea how far I was going to go. I just wanted to get to 10. And I got to the 9th marathon and I felt really good. So I pushed it a little bit harder. And I got my fastest run of the 10 on that 9th marathon. But I didn't recover properly afterwards for various reasons. I think partly because I was thinking, oh, I'm across the line now, I'm almost done. So I didn't have the ice bath, and I didn't have the good nutrition. I didn't hydrate properly afterwards, and I didn't get an early night. So all the things that had been previously contributing to me being able to get up the next day and run another marathon, I didn't do. So the 10th marathon was just a horror. It was so hard, that last marathon. I'd torn a muscle in my leg, and it was just, every footstep was just painful. And I was about 2/3 of the way, 3/4 of the way through that last run, and I became really aware of this suffering that I was going through. And I just kind of realized in that moment that there was a reason. I knew why I was feeling that. I was just run 9 3/4 marathons, so of course I'm going to feel a little bit tired by that point. But it was that signal. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's to get to this point here, not just to get to the end, but to get to this point and have those questions asked of myself, like, "What have you got, George?" And I remember feeling this sudden lift of energy and kind of a renewed sense of connection to that as a goal, and I just felt this kind of elevation, and I got to the end, so I managed to complete it. I was in bits for days and days afterwards, for like a few weeks because of my leg, but the fact that I'd had that experience was the first real, and that was about 8-9 years ago, the first real experience I had of this stress is enhancing. I could feel it, I could feel the pain, feel the discomfort, and I was able to reframe it in the moment to something that could actually fuel me and carry me forwards to across the line.
It's that reframe is the hardest bit when you think about it originally, because to have that awareness, you need to also desire to have that awareness. So you need to work on identifying it, because we quite easily so used to being in certain stressful scenarios that we don't realize we're actually stressing. It's what's happening. You cannot think on top of it.
Yeah. I think, but that's a great point, because it can feel sometimes when you hear about this, I just have a stress enhancing mindset, and then you find yourself at the end of the day having got lost in the stress again, and you think, I'm never going to be able to do this. So we actually need a little bit of self-compassion as well, and an awareness or a realization that we're going to get better, and it's about cultivating it rather than going from I'm rubbish at stress to I'm awesome at stress.
Yeah.
Like, how can I just get better at stress, a bit better each day? And maybe starting off with some low-level challenging situations. I think one of the reasons why people have really embraced things like ice baths and cold showers and cold water dipping recently is because it's a really easy way, as in it's safe, especially like a 60-second cold shower at the end of a normal warm shower. It's very easy to do that, and to sort of embrace that suffering, embrace that discomfort. And yeah, there are some benefits you get after the shower, and immune system, the dopamine response, motivation and drive. You get all of that. But I think in the moment, by doing that, you get to feel the stress response kick in and be okay with that. As you do it in these control situations, and you cultivate that mindset that this is okay, this is good for me, I'm feeling like this isn't a sign that I should turn the shower off or turn it back to hot again. This is okay, this is my body responding in a very natural and healthy way. And then you can apply that same belief and awareness in those other situations in the life which are maybe happening to you, rather than you being in control of.
That's amazing advice. That's exactly what I literally wanted to find out. How do you do that? But if you intentionally induce the stressful scenario, it could be as small as big, you can actually make yourself a bit more aware that this is what's happening. And the scenario is fake, essentially. You can get out of it at a time, and it's not going to continue or consume your entire day. So by putting yourself in those scenarios intentionally, where they can last for however you long, you're creating that first step of awareness. So then when actually a real scenario will hit you, you'll be able to, oh, wait a minute, I'm feeling stress. What do I do? And you, like how you said it earlier, you kind of step out and look at yourself.
Yes. Yeah. I think a part of it as well is being intentional and deciding in advance, today I'm gonna, and not just about stress, just being aware of your emotions, being aware of the thoughts that you're having. Because if you think about stress, if you think about resilience, think about motivation, it's all happening in your head. I mean, there's a physical reaction going on in your body as well, especially with the stress response. But it's the way you talk to yourself, and that's the reframing bit. Reframing is always a mental game, and you have the same physical response, and you say, instead of telling myself this story about it, I'm going to tell myself this story about it. And we do it all the time, and often when I'm teaching this, I'll ask the group, has anybody ever done a bungee jump or a go ape high wires or anything like that? You've done a bungee jump, have you?
Yeah.
Right, and you would have had that stress response.
You know what's happened?
What's
My
that?
knees were going jelly because I was going on top of really high bridge, and because of the height and the idea that I'm going to jump, I couldn't walk, and suddenly I went on my knees. I've never seen my body reacting that way. So you can see what's internally what was going on.
But at the same time, you'd have been doing that. You were doing that voluntarily, presumably.
Yes.
And you're doing it because it's going to be a rush. It's going to be a buzz. It's going to be exciting. And you probably look back at that time and think, wow, that was so exciting. Maybe you never did want to do another bungee jump again. But that's why we do those things. But the response is exactly the same compared with if you had a really tight deadline that you had to tackle, or there's a physical danger for your body. In that situation, your body is recognizing that this is dangerous, so I'm about to jump off a perfectly good bridge here. And it doesn't register, the logic centers don't register that you're attached by this hopefully safe bungee cord. You know that logically, but the emotional centers don't know that. So you still get the same response. But it's the same as when you're in any of those other life situations that will trigger that same response. So you can look at that and say, not think, oh my goodness, I'm so excited, I've got a deadline. But I find in the lead up to a presentation, for example, especially if it's a new one that I haven't delivered before, or it feels like there's a lot of riding on my performance and getting that message across, I feel quite nervous in the few days before it. And that nervousness, that stress is the thing that makes me sit down and focus and do the work, to do the prep, to tweak it, to work the deck, to rehearse things, to get feedback. If I didn't feel that stress, I was like, oh, I'll be fine. Yeah. I'm not stressed about this. Yeah. Then I'm not going to do the work, and I'm going to turn up complacent, and it's going to suck. So that's another reframe there. Really simple, looking at what that stress response is telling you. And in that case, it's telling me, George, roll your sleeves up, clear the decks, do the work, because this is important.
You can prepare today. I can see.
Okay, I was really nervous about today. So I thought, right, I've got to do some prep.
I feel like we could talk about this particular message for quite some time. And the bits that you thrown in there, intentional and then internal dialogue, are, I think, really important, because I usually used to say to people, or in my coaching, I say, would you say to another person, you are stupid, you are a loser, you are useless? Would you? Just like that? No. So why do you say those things to yourself? And why, that internal dialogue is that one that you should be able to step out of it and control, and with that intention, as you mentioned. I think it's a theme goes on with the mindset and intention and awareness that we could probably talk forever, but I'm going to introduce to the second message, because it just keeps getting better and better. Keep an eye on the big picture, but focus on the next step you need to take.
Yeah.
Love this.
So this one, the story around this is another of the big ultra endurance challenges that I did, and it's really, have your goal, but don't get overwhelmed by it. Look at what you need to do next, but which is easier said than done a lot of the times, because it can feel overwhelming. You can feel like, my goodness, I've got this huge monumental task to complete, and maybe it's a really long-term goal. Like if you're doing a degree, or if you're on a course, or if you're training for a marathon, it's going to take you 3 or 4 months, then you have to stay the course. It's not good enough to just be motivated for a day. And so you look at this big picture, you look at this mountain you still have to climb, and it can feel very overwhelming, but you have to keep an eye on it. So you have to keep that in mind. That's what I'm striving towards, and hopefully have some sort of connection to why that's important, and what that will lead you towards more of, or bring into your life, and who you'll be, and how you'll change as a result of it. But even then, the only thing you can really control is taking that next step. Like, often I think we get overwhelmed because we think, I don't know how I'm going to get from here to there. Like, there's so many steps, there's so much unknown. Whereas the reality is, all we need to know is, like, how do you take that next step? And so the story that comes to mind, and that I was thinking of when I wrote that mindset message for you, was the year after I did those 10 marathons in 10 days, I kind of felt like I still hadn't done a proper ultra marathon, right? It's 262 miles in 10 days. It's still quite a lot of running, but it's not, an ultra marathon is anything that's longer than a marathon. So a friend of mine ran an event called Endure 24, which is 24 hours. and you run around this 5-mile loop as many times as you can. Most people do it in pairs, so one person goes, other person goes, and take it in turns, or in teams of 4, or in teams of, I think, 8. So, and then you have a few solo runners. So I was a solo runner. I decided, you know what, I'm going to do this. So the goal for me was to run 100 miles, 20 laps of this 5-mile cross-country circuit. And I had a friend who had done a similar thing, so I got some coaching, got some advice, got some guidance from him, a few other people actually. And I felt pretty good for it, but also I knew there were going to be lots and lots of unknowns as well. So I didn't know what every step would be, apart from literally you just keep running. And actually, by the way, ultra running is great because there's lots of walking. It's not just anybody tells you that they've run 100 miles. They haven't really. They've walked some of it as well, probably quite a lot of it. I'd say I walked about 40% of that. And every time you come to a hill, you walk because you might run a little bit faster, but it will take so much more out of your body. So to keep going, you walk up the hills. Anyway, and there's lots of eating as well. It's the other favorite part of it.
Definitely then.
Basically, it's a walk. It's a picnic.
Yeah.
Right. Lots and lots of food.
With lots of people.
Lots of people around you. It's a big celebration. It's fantastic. And because it was this 5-mile loop.
That's the right mindset. Right?
I had that was a mindset. It's just a picnic, basically. A great 24-hour picnic. So I had all my food, all my sweets and crisps, and I had an American cheesecake. I love cheesecake.
Who carried it all?
No, we have it in like the athlete station. So you have one station here. You run 5 miles, have at it. Run another 5 miles, go for it. Another 5 miles. And there's a big cookhouse over there as well. And I had I think a massive bacon, butty, and sausage bat for my dinner at 8 p.m. So you start at 12 p.m. on a Saturday, you finish at 12 p.m. on a Sunday. So I'm running around. I didn't eat the cheesecake in the end because it was a hot day and it had been out. I was like, I don't fancy that by the time I got to it. But it got to about 2:30, 3 a.m. So I've been running for 15 hours by that point, and I was 65 miles in. And in my station, a lot of walking, more walking towards the middle bit. Like overnight is the hardest bit. So 3 o'clock in the morning, generally speaking, human beings are at our absolute lowest. Not necessarily lowest ebb, though that's how I felt at the time. But we should be asleep. 3 o'clock in the morning, we should be asleep, like in the depths of sleep. And I was out there running. And I put this chair in my little corner of this athlete station. So I had this chair and I just sat down in this chair, 65 miles. I'm going to take 5. I'm tired. I've just run 65 miles. And in that moment, I knew what the goal was to run 100 miles. But when I sat down in that chair, and the longer I sat, the seconds ticked by, the minutes ticked by, the harder it got for me to get out physically, but also mentally, because I was completely spent. I wasn't motivated. I was writing in my head the story I was going to tell my email subscribers, my followers on social media, why I quit 65 miles. I could literally see my tent with my sleeping bag. It was like 40 meters away. I could have just stopped and gone and finished it there. 65 miles, that's a pretty long distance. I'd have been happy with that, right? You'd have been impressed. Yeah. 65 miles, I ran 65 miles, amazing. But I knew that the goal was to run 100 miles. So that was the big picture, but I didn't know how I was going to get there because of how I felt in that moment. And I've never gone even close to running that far. And then I had that realization that all I had to do, actually, I didn't have to run 35 miles. All I had to do was to get out of the chair. And that whole get out of the chair has become a bit of a mantra for me now, because literally I knew that if I got out of the chair, if I managed to stand up, I would waddle out of the aid station and I'd probably get that first hill done, and I'd get that first mile done, and I'd get that first half done, and eventually I'd come back. I didn't know how long it was going to take me, but I knew that I would come back and I'd be another 5 miles done, and I just have to keep repeating that for another 7 laps, and then I'd complete the goal. And actually, when you get to sort of 7, 6, about sort of 5 o'clock in the morning, 6, 7, the sun's coming up. It's in the summertime, beautiful sunrise, and you're running through the woods. It's an ancient forest that we were running through, and you see the sun rising. Your spirits lift, and you're back on it again. So you get your second wind. But I knew that to get there, all I had to do was to get out of the chair, run that first little bit, and so on and so forth, and come back. And that's what I mean when I say keep an eye on the big picture, but don't get overwhelmed by it. You've got to think about how you can just focus on that next step. That's the only thing you have to find the motivation to. And then the next step will present itself as to what you need to do next, and so on and so forth.
I love this because this is yet one of my favorites, but I call it totally different. Your mindset message is in a really nice way framing it. I am always saying, how do you eat an elephant?
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites. I say that to my son because he sometimes gets overwhelmed. And also many times when you start certain projects, you don't know all the steps. You just, majority of the times you will know the first step to make. People will always, well, for example, Mindset Kitchen. When this idea was born in my head, do you think I knew all of these things, the lights, where you will be sitting, will I be cooking, how will I be cooking and talking, and all these things? I was getting really overwhelmed myself, but I have that awareness. I have that mindset where, wait a minute, all I need to know is what's my first step. And majority of times you know your first step. So you have the big picture, as you say, in front of you, have that vision, whether to achieve 100 miles by walking only, or
There's a bit of running.
a bit of running as well, or you want to create a new idea or build a business, anything. You will get overwhelmed naturally because it's so much unknown, isn't it?
I think a big part of that as well is just having that confidence that you can figure it out. It's having the confidence that you don't have to know every single step at this point here. You just need to be able to take that next step. And, you know, for example, take Mindset Kitchen. You had the idea, you had the vision, and maybe it's not even exactly the way that you would envisage it, but it's about having that direction that you're moving in and moving towards, and then thinking, okay, what's one small thing that I can do to move me closer towards that goal? I remember about 5 years ago, when I really decided that I wanted to make this transition towards being a speaker. Like, that was the thing that I wanted my business to look like, doing more presentations, more training. I wanted to be on my feet. I wanted to be in front of people. And that's what I wanted to do. I was doing a bit of it, but I wasn't doing very much. And I wanted to do more of it. And one of the things I did at that time, I kind of really set my goal. It was about 5 or 6 years ago. I really set very, very specific goals. And it wasn't even specific in the sense of how many sessions I wanted, how much money I wanted to earn, the kind of people I wanted to work with. It was just that I knew what it looked like. And I could create that vision of just being busy, speaking virtually, speaking in person, conferences, just a range of different things. But I knew that there was such a long way to go to get to that point. I knew it was going to be hard. And so one of the things I committed to doing was recording a video every single day to log what I'd done that day to move me closer towards that goal of becoming a professional speaker. And for about 1,870 days,
wow,
I did it.
Really?
Every single day, and literally finished about a year ago. I stopped doing it and I literally just stopped just like that. So I started it January 1st, whenever it was, 5-6 years ago. I finished it end of December 2022, because at that point there, I felt like actually the whole purpose of doing these videos, it served a purpose. It was a habit. It's quite hard to do sometimes, especially on a bad day. Like when I felt like I'd just been failing and I hadn't been making any progress. And so I had to reframe what progress looked like. Progress didn't mean getting another speaking engagement. Progress might have meant making a phone call or putting a social media post up on LinkedIn. Or it might have meant doing some research or practicing the craft and working on a presentation. That was progress as well. So I had to look at what have I done today, every single day, even on the bad days, that has just moved me a little bit closer towards that goal. And by having that to keep coming back to, I knew that every day, at the end of the day, I was going to have to record this video. It was something that I was going to have to basically check in and say, have I done something or haven't I?
That's a commitment.
Well, it wasn't. I felt like I needed that commitment. I even said many times in these videos, like the day that I decide I'm too tired, if I think it, I do it. If I forget, legitimately forget, then fine. Like, I'm not going to beat myself up for that. I think sometimes a habit can enslave you rather than serve you. We say, I'm going to do this every day, and you do it. A classic is 10,000 steps, right? People say, I'm going to do 10,000 steps, and it's 11:59 p.m. and they're walking around the lounge to hit that 10,000 steps or close the ring or whatever. And actually, the best thing for you to do in that moment would be in bed asleep at midnight. But the habit is now enslaving you to, I don't want to break my streak. I've got to do it. I've got to do it. So, but I knew that this habit was so important to me, this daily video. So I said, if I think it, then I'll do it. And it was uncomfortable sometimes. It was difficult, but I knew that, and I said this, as I said in the video, a few of the videos, if I remember to do it and I decided, oh, you know, sorry, I can't be bothered, I'll miss today. Any moment I said that was basically the same as me saying, this goal isn't important to me anymore. And every time I thought that, I was like, this goal is important to me. So I will get back out of bed. Now I've just remembered to do it. So I go into the other room. I will point this flipping camera at my face, you know, bleary-eyed hair all over the place. And I will record this 1-minute video saying, it's been a bad day. Haven't really done very much, but I have done this. And you know what? Here I am showing up to do this video. And sometimes that's all it is on those videos. It's just me showing up on a daily basis. So that commitment for me was just an example and a message to myself. This is important. I'm making progress on the way to achieving that goal.
So I think your first message and second kind of ties in. So just imagine if you get overwhelmed by the big goal and you're not focusing on your first step, you can get overwhelmed. But let's say you did focus on the first step. The second step is actually making you stressed. You're uncomfortable because you don't know what you're doing. It's again, linking back, it's okay. It's understanding that the progress happens and the growth happens at the same time.
Yeah.
And if someone asks me something to do, or I'm doing something and I don't feel anything, I'm not stressed, I don't have goosebumps, or I'm not like excited, my heart is not jumping, I'm not even going to do it.
Yeah.
Will I grow? I always ask myself, will this give me something to me personally, to my mind, to my body? And so when you say that first step, take the first step only and don't get overwhelmed, the second step could get you really stressed because you're thinking of the third and the fourth and so on. And these both quite tie in really nicely,
100%,
because you will need that. And many people, I think, I could be in the same position as well. We tend to experience the challenge on the third or fourth step and so on. As you go deeper, it gets harder and harder. That's when we decide to quit. That's when we have that internal dialogue. I'm not good enough to do this. I am, I'm not smart, or I'm stupid, whatever the internal dialogue goes on in that scenario where you actually so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So I think that first step is so important, but it's the easiest as well, in my view. But also it's about doing it. So I wanted to add something, the same as Mindset Kitchen. It was really hard and it's still hard. And I could have given up before I even started.
Yeah.
I promise, because that's the beginning. 1 to 50 steps were really hard, but it's about not giving up as well, right?
Yeah.
It's about keep on going and having that big picture.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's so easy to get overwhelmed, and obviously that does bring that stress with it. And I think, again, for me, the videos were so important because I knew that I was going to feel like I'm not making any progress, and I knew that I was going to want to quit, and it would be one of those things that just sort of fizzled out, and I'll just keep doing a bit of it, but I'll keep doing the online stuff, I'll keep doing the coaching, maybe do a little bit of PT as well, and I never really get to that place that I really wanted to be, which this year has been a good year. I've been very busy, and it's been the vast majority of what I've done has been presenting, so I kind of feel like I've made it. But had I not been really connected to that goal in the early days, I would never have got to this point here. I'm certain of that, because I've tried and failed at many things in the past that I haven't felt quite that same level of commitment and certainty about, that I will get there. I just got to keep moving forwards, keep taking that next step, no matter how uncomfortable it is, and sort of recognizing and appreciating and understanding and being okay with that. Being okay with the fact that it's going to be uncomfortable. That's the stress mindset. As you said, the two things tie in together. But the awareness should be the meta message with all of this, to create that sense of awareness so you know when to apply that stress mindset, that stress is enhancing mindset. So you know when to rein it back in from a feeling of being overwhelmed to doing what I call a brain dump. Like, get everything, all the things you have to get done, when they're in your head, they expand and they blow up, and it's like, wow, I can't think of what to do next. You get it down on paper, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, I can see what I need to do next, and it's much more clear. But you have to have the awareness to do that in the first place. So 100% agree.
George, did you notice that I've also been cooking?
You have been, and it smells amazing. And can I say as well, by the way, I've done, when I do my chicken katsu, I got the recipe from a vegan website. So I went predominantly plant-based. I'm not vegetarian, not vegan, certainly not vegan, but I started cooking a lot more sort of veggie-based, plant-based meals over lockdown. That's when I really got into it. And I've had this phenomenal recipe for katsu, but it used slices of aubergine and sweet potato. And then I do some chicken breast as well, but I do like little nuggets. And I wrapped in the panko breadcrumbs, and then I always bake them in the oven.
It's a healthier way. I'm not keeping you too healthy in this occasion. Only because I would do the same. I would air fry.
Okay.
And for weekly dinners, this is a treat. You came in here for a treat.
I did.
When you go to a restaurant, you don't ask, would you mind baking this and not using butter and all that? And
you go for it.
They would be like, do you want to just come and cook for yourself in the kitchen? So this is not something I would do every time when I make a chicken breast. But to have it authentic, I think it's very important to do it the right way, as the recipe says. So I've been cooking this chicken really slowly in the meantime. But also I had to prepare katsu curry sauce in advance.
Yes.
Because I didn't want for the guests to listen to the blending and all sorts of smokes coming out. But the katsu curry, essentially, as you probably would know, it has carrots, onions, it has curry powder, garam masala, some soy sauce, some Worcester sauce, and then you just blend it, and it just becomes really creamy. And then at the end, you add this ingredient I did not know katsu curries had, but there is an apple in there. Did you know that?
What, an apple?
Apple.
I did not know that.
Yes.
No, there isn't in my version.
Yeah, there is an apple. And in the meantime, I'm also having in the rice maker, so it's sitting all warm for you. So it's a lot of prep gone in beforehand. So it's not too much cooking, it looks like, but then it means I can focus fully on yourself and hear your messages. So without further ado, I know there's, again, so much to talk about the second one, but I'll introduce the third message.
Okay.
Set goals to challenge and change you, not just to achieve an end. Amazing. Tell me about it.
It's funny, actually, when you were just talking a moment ago, as we were finishing off that second mindset message conversation, you were talking about how you are aware of how you're growing through this process. And that really speaks to this third and final mindset message. There's a favorite Jim Rohn quote of mine. Have you come across any Jim Rohn writings? He's passed now. He's an American business and sort of life coach, speaker. He was Tony Robbins' mentor back in the day. So he's kind of real old school. And one of the favorite quotes of his that has just been with me through all of the challenges that I've engaged with and all of the challenges of my life, and certainly goals that I've set, is this one. He says, don't set a goal for what you will achieve, but rather for what it will make of you in order to achieve it.
Love that. Gave me goosebumps.
I mean, it's so simple, but so powerful as well. And so when I think about the 10 marathons in 10 days, it wasn't even an event. It wasn't even something that other people were doing. I was doing it by myself. I was doing it in my local town of Tame, near Oxford, and it was a 5 and a bit mile loop, and I was doing it 5 times a day for 10 days. And it's utterly pointless. If you think about it, running 100 miles, running around in circles for 24 hours is the definition of madness. 10 marathons in 10 days, it's pointless. There was no, apart from being able to say, oh, I did 100 miles, I did 10 marathons in 10 days. So the reason why the Jim Rohn quote was so powerful for me was because it wasn't about the end. It wasn't about what I was going to achieve. It was about who I became in the process. It was always about the change that I went through in order to accomplish that goal. Who I had to become, the kind of person who did that sort of challenge.
I love this. Yeah.
And I think linking that to your example of Mindset Kitchen, like you've had a varied career up to this point, and all of a sudden now here you are doing this. You've had to become the sort of person who's able to do this. Presenting, obviously cooking, all the tech stuff that goes behind the social media, like everything that you've put together, you've had to become the sort of person who is ready to make mistakes and go again things not to be absolutely perfect, and to be able to work with that, and to have it's going to get better, that growth mindset. And I think that's so important as a message for people setting goals, because there's another favorite expression of mine. This one's from a guy called Sean Aker, who wrote the book The Happiness Advantage, and he talks about how we push happiness over the cognitive horizon. So I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when I've lost 10 pounds. I'll be happy when I've run the marathon. I'll be happy when I've got 1,000 subscribers. I'll be happy when I've got this much money in the bank. Of course, you get to each of those goals and you're happy for a moment, but then you want the next step. And you forget about what you've done and how you've grown and what you've been through and the support that you've had on the journey. And so it doesn't tamp down your ambition to acknowledge and to feel the gratitude and the contentedness with where you are right now, and this sense of how you're growing, how you're developing, what you're learning about yourself and about your craft, your skills. And in fact, by doing that and creating that sense of contentedness and happiness in the moment, it actually accelerates you towards reaching those goals. So that idea for me of who am I going to become? Here's a goal that is important to me, and this is the reason why it's important to me, but along the way, I'm going to become this kind of person. And I felt that with my speaking goals, with my endurance challenges, with all of the goals that I've set, even if I wasn't aware of it before I kind of fully embraced that quote, it's always, for me, been about personal growth. And I think that's something that I'll never lose. And I'm more than happy to share that message as well.
Amazing. So, George, it's also what came to me when you said that. It's about, again, having that awareness that there's external and internal. There's external, your outer environment, and internal. And whilst you're reaching goals in the external environment, so it depends how people name success, what success is, right? People, different successes, becoming healthy, losing weight, or creating a new business, whatever success looks like. The goal, the vision is how it's perceived externally on the outer world. And the inner world, it requires a lot of reflection. And then when we have that understanding, intentional understanding of inner and outer, then when you achieve the goal, you will focus so much more on the inner. And that's when you realize a bit more of a growth rather than measure success by the outer world.
And I've coached and worked with many successful people who are deeply unhappy and unfulfilled and discontented and don't know why, because they've got everything. They've got the money, they've got the success, they've got the status, they've got the house, the holidays, the family, they've got all of those things. But they haven't got that sense of inner peace and fulfillment, because maybe they've been chasing something that wasn't really theirs, or they have just been chasing for their entire lives. And it doesn't mean that if you ever feel like that the way around it is to quit your job and do something completely different. It might be for some people, but for others, it's just the case of trying to create that sense of inner contentedness with that journey. I think one of the big drivers that causes a lot of disconnection with a lot of people is comparison. So you might compare yourself to how you see other people. You might be doing very well, but you look at somebody else. You lost a pound or 2 pounds this week, or you've lost 10 pounds in the last 3 months, and you look at somebody else who's been on the same weight loss journey as you, and they've lost 3 pounds more, or they're looking better. We look at social media and look at how much better everybody else feels, even though we feel pretty good and we look pretty good, and we then see others, it's like, they look better though. We get the promotion, or we earn more money, and we compare with how others are doing. I found that with the ultra running as well. As soon as I did 100 miles, the question I kept getting asked was, but this person, they just did a 200-mile ultra marathon or a 48-hour ultra marathon. Why don't you have a think about this? Have you thought about doing that race? And I never wanted to get into that. I never compared myself to anybody else. In fact, during the 10 and 10, there was somebody else who was doing 10 marathons in 10 days at the same time as I was. He started a couple of days after I did. It was an actual event. I had no idea these things actually existed. So he was doing this proper event. And when I was running, I was doing some filming as well. And I was posting it to Facebook as I was going around. I was like, look at me, I can run, I can film, I can talk, and I can do social media on the run. So I was doing all of that. Less so towards the end of the marathons. But I did this one film, and it was about the 6th or 7th marathon in. And I was talking about this guy who was running these marathons. I was running them in about between sort of 4 hours and say 4:20. I think the fastest I did was 3:50, that ninth, and bad marathon because it injured me. And this guy was doing them under 3 hours, which to anybody who knows anything about marathon running will know 3 hours is a pretty good time. And it's a very good time to be doing day after day after day for 10 days in a row. And I, in one of these particular videos, I talked about this. I think I'd felt this, oh my goodness, like, this guy's so much quicker than I am.
Yeah, George.
And I was thinking about, yeah, I should be doing better. And it's like, it was, and I had this realization, I filmed it and captured it, that just because somebody else is doing something more or seemingly better or going further or faster than I'm going, it doesn't devalue my achievement and how I feel about what I'm doing, because this is my journey that I'm on. And from then on, I've always been really conscious of comparing myself to what other people are doing. There was a woman, I'm just chucking stories at you now, but there was a woman on the 100 miler, that first time because I did that 24-hour 100 miles twice. Once just wasn't enough. So I did it on the first time. There was a lady doing it at the same time, and she was a bit ahead of me, and she ended up doing 115 miles to my 100 miles. And she was phenomenal. She got the fastest, furthest woman. I think she was third overall or second overall. But for her, that was a training run for a 48-hour ultramarathon she was doing in Australia a few weeks later.
Yeah. And you don't even know that.
And I didn't know that until she told me, and I was like, okay. You know. But it would have been so easy for me to have lost myself in that flipping heck, and here I thought I was doing good. And look at her, she's so much better than I am.
Yeah.
What's the point of me even like being it? There's no point in having that narrative.
Yeah.
I can have the exact same experience or the exact same performance, but experience it differently because I'm disempowering myself and giving away that positivity and how I feel about myself because of what somebody else is doing. And frankly, Diana, there will always be somebody doing better than you, doing more than you. And they have a different life. They have a different story. They have a different approach. They have different things going on. And it's up to us to, again, have that self-awareness so that we can just stay focused on what we're doing and our story, our journey, and really embrace and enjoy and appreciate those successes as well.
And you know what? You scratched something from the previous episode because Stuart Wade came here and he said comparison is a thief of joy.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a thief of joy, and that's exactly what you said, because people were successful, from your view, they have everything. Mm-hmm. However, they're not happy.
I would sort of put an amendment to that as well, because I do believe that when we think about comparison like that, however, it can also be an inspiration. So you can look at what other people are doing and think, wow, look, they've done this. I'm inspired to try that. I'm inspired to do that. Like, this is how I'm doing. They're doing things differently. They're doing things in a way that I want to do that.
Yeah.
And so I think comparison can be positive and effective as well. But most of the time, the default setting for us is to compare and for it to steal the joy. As you said, comparison is a thief of joy.
Amazing, George. Any last words before you start indulging?
I've been watching you as I've been talking there, just meticulously preparing
it has to
this
look
meal.
It
looks amazing. And
can you smell it as well?
I can smell it as well, yes. I was going to say, obviously you can't smell this on the camera there, but it smells amazing, looks amazing, and I can't wait to tuck in and try this.
I was worried that the chicken might, when you do this on the show, you don't really check the chicken, and I just kind of was guessing. I'm the kind of cook who just guesses. So I was cutting the chicken and was praying it's not going to be raw. Yes.
Some poison.
That would be just the worst. So what have I made for you here is a chicken curry, fried chicken curry, not baked. Chicken curry with chicken katsu curry. That's the one. Chicken katsu curry with white rice and broccoli and a little bit of garnish.
Absolutely amazing.
You can make a mess as well, but I tried to do it like I've seen in the photo as well.
That
in one of the cookbooks.
That looks amazing. Thank you so much.
Hope you enjoy. And George, I'm going to put all the details how people can reach you. And would you like to be reachable?
Oh yes, please. Yeah. If anybody wants to follow me on LinkedIn or subscribe to my emails, then that's through the website. So yes, please do feel free to put those details on with this. And if anybody wants to get in touch, then I'm more than happy to have a conversation.
Wonderful. I'll put the details of your website, perhaps on your LinkedIn as well, so people can in touch and see maybe you can help them with the mindset, what you just said. It was incredible. The messages were amazing. I could have literally spoken about them forever because they're quite applicable to me, but I think could be really applicable across so many various ages, times in your life, career, anywhere, relationship, stress, love, anything. So thank you so much for bringing these wonderful messages. I really enjoyed talking to you. I'm going to finish this so that you can enjoy the meal whilst it's hot. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I truly enjoyed talking to you, George, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dana.
Thank you.